chat. I mean, there'll be a description under the YouTube channel, under the YouTube live. And then if you want to ask a question, I just need your first name, your year of birth, and your question, and your pronouns, she, he, they. Thank you for being here. Ooh. All right. So as we begin, it's going to send some hearts out for everybody that's watching. So as we start, let's start with tuning in to the heart, connecting to our higher selves. And thank you for the hearts back. Yeah, the description should be added soon under the YouTube live. Okay, so let's do a tune in. Okay. I just got a confirmation that the sound is good. Right. Oh, thank you. Okay, so let's tune in. Get comfy, always. Get comfy. So we're going to do it with eyes open. So connecting, we're going to focus on connecting to the heart and going in through the heart into the inner body, into source consciousness, connecting to source consciousness, that inner pillar inside of us as source emanated beings, connecting inside and just putting our attention in the inside and going and knowing that we're going into the inner body. So our higher self is inside. So Eckhart Tolle calls the higher self the deep I. So that you go deep into the I am presence. So we're going into the depth. So the visual I have is like you're getting kind of your scuba gear on and you're ready to go into the ocean. It's kind of like that. And if you don't know how to swim or that image kind of scares you, like this is just in our imaginations, right? We're using our creativity, we're using our imaginations. And then we want to claim, I am not of their realm. And this realm has no claim on what I am. So what we're saying is when we're saying that I am not of their realm, we're saying I am not part of the material plane, that I have my consciousness, my source spark is with source. So I am in physical form in 3D and I honor my body. I love my body. My body, our body is our compass. It gives us the clue of what's happening and what interference is happening for us, and also shows when something is like when we're disconnected. So I'm just going to claim, I can see the internet is having some trouble, so I'm just going to claim the Wi-Fi and source's name. So this is the technology decree. I'm going to claim the Zoom in source's name. I claim YouTube in source's name. So 3D interference is frequency interference. And so what we're doing in this work, connecting to our higher selves, is stabilizing our frequency at the heart-based frequency, which is 5D frequency. So emanating from the heart and then not dipping down, maybe not at all, but not very often, not dipping down to the low 3D of shame, guilt. The most powerful of all is fear. right? Shame, guilt, fear, sadness, and then sadness, depression, anxiety, where you're just completely taken over. So with the decree, we're helping stabilize our homes to help us stabilize our frequency. So securing our homes so that at least when we're in our home and it's claimed in source's name, that we have a chance to kind of amplify the heart-based frequency so that we're not stuck in the low 3Ds, fear, shame, guilt, sadness, depression, anxiety. Because it is frequency. I mean, if you're sitting at home and you're doing nothing and nothing has happened, and then you're gripped with fear and anxiety, and nothing's happened in the now, in the present moment. Yes, of course, maybe there's life situations that are happening, but in the moment, you're fine, you're peaceful, you're in your own space. That's what we're talking about. There's like an interference. So just the chat caught my eye. Helen says, hello, Elaine. Hi, Helen. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Welcome. I'm going to send some hearts. And thank you to everybody else that's here. And if you want to ask a question or say hi and pop into the chat, but you're also just welcome to be, incognito. Keep your privacy. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing in this work. We're anchoring presence, essentially, like our I am presence, our source sparked emanated being, and we're amplifying it so that we stay in that frequency. And that by doing the decrees, we're removing interference because we kind of have to name it, we have to see it, we have to name it, and then we have to say, I release it, and then seal it in source's name. And the decree does that, and it transmutes it with the fire, with burning, burning the piece of paper. So we're really wanting to just doing some clearing. Let's see who needs some clearing. I just get a message like clear, 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 clear. So the fast track, the hair is like an antenna. And so we're just going to clear the energy and then claim this space in source's name. Good. Just looking at the chat again. Hi, Elaine and Helen and everyone watching with a pink wave. That's Sunija. And Helen says, hi, hey, Sunija, with a little blue emoji. That's cute. So that's really nice. So, we've kind of met in doing these YouTube lives, and then Helen and Sunija join and have been really supportive and asked a lot of questions that, many people would have. So, 5D is one, that we're one, and that we're not, the ego is, the conscious mind is like me, 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 me. I want, it only happens to me. And then 5D is it happens, you know, to all, and that we can help clear all. So that's the heart-based frequency. So we can affirm like I'm already aligned. I already trust. I have already received. And then just see how that feels in the body. Good. So the last decree that was published on YouTube was the 20th of June, 2026, and it is the source reset nervous system. And that is really what gets hijacked in 3D is our nervous system, our lymphatic system, our fascia. Fascia I just learned about, and fascia also works in like a spiral. So when we have an injury, we unwind it in a spiral. So it's really interesting, and it works with energy and frequency. So, but we're basically doing a source reset for our nervous system so that we have a chance to not have all of the accumulation, the constant accumulation that happens in our nervous system is, like I know when I've been just completely clobbered in 3D and I'm just like shaking because my, nervous system was so shot. And that was like in 2022, where you're just like so terrified and then you just have to rebuild yourself from scratch. And so just listening to that guided journey, it just sets the intention to kind of start getting the flow, and the flow is coming from you, from your higher self, and then source. So your higher self is like that pillar of light inside that connects to source. So, and you can think of like, because I always say God, source, divine presence. You can think of like, some people like saying God, but God is the name has been hijacked on 3D Earth. So it's been convoluted. And then source is the all. And then the divine presence, that's Eckhart Tolle's word. And that is basically like imagining, the sun is coming streaming through a window and it's like gentle. It's kind of like that. The divine is we're able to receive the divine because it's more like a muted, softer, um, like energy coming in, so it's like a softer support. So I went to Eckhart Tolle's intensive in Whistler on the weekend, and it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So 7 sessions sitting with Eckhart. And it's really intense because he's so easy with his stories and storytelling, but I can feel there's activations and there's like an intensity, like he is such a clear transmitter of frequency that it's um I feel like, when we're together with that intention in such, there was like probably 700 people, we're like able, you know, like he kind of prepared us, the first couple days. And then he was like, on the third day, we're going to do like, kind of maybe go into the pain body, but we'll see. And then we did it. And that was like Saturday morning. And it was so intense. And I could feel, because it's like as soon as he talks about the pain body, so that's basically, to me, the pain body is what the archons create. They create, trauma after trauma after trauma, so that, and especially when you're young, so that by the time you're an adult, you're so kind of used to trauma that for me, I felt like I had like a light bulb like on my head saying, okay, if you're like a psychopath, come here, because you feel like you're attracting trauma and these horrific people, and it doesn't take like many horrific people. It can be one horrific person, and then that's enough, to cause a lot of damage. But then to have a couple or a few, and basically, with the decree, we're naming, kind of the players. We're naming, who did what and then what happened. And then you're revoking it. And then you're reclaiming your source origination. Like you're claiming your innocence. You're claiming your origin, that you are a source spark. You're not here to be used and abused. You're not here to be used as a punching bag. You're not here to be lied to and manipulated, right? And then the decree, you're writing it down, you're speaking it in your own name, you're burning it, and you're throwing it into the toilet, the ashes. So it's very powerful in terms of like sealing it so that there isn't this continuous recursion. because 3D is let's do it over again, again and again and again. And it was interesting because like I don't usually have heard Eckhart talk about this, but he did talk about what I call the light trap, or many people call the light trap. So when you die, there's this like trick where they're like, oh, here's all your relatives and oh, come into the light. And it's a trap because they're convincing you, oh yeah, try again with a psychopath, try again with this with a narcissist, try to make it better, try to improve it. And then you come into another life. And I was actually, I know, in this cycle for 4 lifetimes, 4 lifetimes with the same people and the same trick. But in this lifetime, I awakened. So, you know, I know how tricky it is and how hard it is, and how hard it is to see things as they are. And the other thing that, kind of came up is this whole kind of timeline collapsing, like what Eckhart calls like the new earth, what I call like 5D consciousness. So, or many, but those are the terms that I use. So 5D consciousness, and then collapsing these timelines. So everybody's like, but what happens, what happens to everybody? Like, because 5D is a frequency. And so it's a heart-based frequency, but also the interference that kind of is inside you, around you, also needs to be cleared and released. So this is where the kind of the decree came from, because my question just kept being was, well, how do we stop the recursion? How do we stop being tricked? How do we get it so that it's permanent? If 3D is so invasive and 3D is so persistent, then and the whole system is set up to keep you in fear and in those low base, states of being, then, what do we do? When we don't want to get pulled into the lower dimensions, but it happens, because 3D has so much trauma, So if you're sitting there and then all of a sudden it pops in, oh, when you were 5, this happened to you. And I was like, oh my God, that happened to me when I was 5. And then you go into the whole scenario. So we're not spiritually bypassing. We're not saying, oh, well, I send, the person that harmed me love and light. We're not doing that. I mean, we are forgiving because we're releasing, but we're not forgiving like bypassing, saying, oh, well, I could, I was 4, but I could handle the abuse. It's like, no, you were 4. You could not handle the abuse. Like that is not true. And the people that abused you that are adults are responsible for the abuse. But when we hold on to it, then we create like a trauma bond with those peoples, or those characters, or those family members, or those people in our field. And so the decree breaks the trauma bond because you're naming it. You're not saying, I could handle, like I would say that to Eckhart all the time, I would say, yeah, like I can handle it. And he's like, okay, let's look at that. You know, like he never, he's a very gentle teacher. So he'd say, okay, well, say there's, and maybe I've said this example before, but he said, say that you're walking along the sidewalk and 3 guys are walking towards you and you're 1 and they're 3. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm on the sidewalk and I just keep walking. And he's like, yeah, but there's 3 guys and there's 1 of you. Like, what would you do? And I said, well, I would just keep walking. And he said, or, or choose consciousness. No, he didn't say that, choose consciousness. He said, or you could cross the street, right? And so that's like emotional intelligence. It's like you're looking at the odds. Something may happen, something may not happen, but really, how comfortable am I gonna be walking in, through like 3 guys? Probably not very comfortable, right? Especially as a young woman. I was 27 at the time when he told the story. And so, but I kept having this, and to me, it's the ego the conscious mind that kept telling me like I can handle it, like I can handle trauma. There's nothing about trauma that you can handle. Trauma essentially is there's no loving witness. You know, you're suffering in silence, you're suffering alone. There's no witness, and you're overtaken, you know, and that's the truth. Like when you're little, when you're overtaken by adults, like you cannot handle, you know, what happened to you. It's out of your control, right? And then that's how the trauma bond is set up, so that we're abused and traumatized when we're little. So then when we're adults, that same abuse is easy to walk into, and that we will marry somebody and have children with somebody that is that destructive, right? And then that's how they create that trauma bond. And then it really takes you down because it's really confusing, you know, because the person that you're living with is the person that's supposed to love you, but they're the people or person that is causing the most harm. And then that's how they keep you in that low 3D. So, but in the decree, we're naming them, and we're not walking through, you know, three guys. We're like, we are naming them, we're seeing things as they are, and we're claiming them. So again, just want to seal this space in Source's name. And then we just call in protection, Source's golden light. So the decree really removes, you know, it reaches the cellular structure to remove the interference. I kind of think of it as implants, like it's like a trauma implant. And then we're basically saying, you know, I see it, I'm not available, I'm not interested, you know, this isn't who I am. You know, so we're anchoring into sovereignty. I'm free. I'm liberated. You know, we're ending generational karmic loops. All right, let's take a look at the chat. There's some questions coming up. And thank you for being here. I'm going to send you some hearts. Boom, boom. Okay. I'm getting annoyed. Okay, Sanija says, I'm getting annoyed with dog owners and them not having respect for people who don't like dogs being around them, especially when near the children. Yeah, yeah. People can be very clueless. And then Sunija says, yesterday I didn't have a swim because dogs were in the water where I wanted to swim. One time a wet dog went straight on my towel while I was swimming. I wonder if this is interference. Oh, that's interesting. So it's like the owners are checked out, right? Because dogs can be really unpredictable and also um wild. You know, like Cindy just said, the dog went on her towel, and then who wants a wet dog towel? You know, I love dogs, but I wouldn't want a dog on my towel making it all wet. Okay, so let's take a look and see. So Sinija, I know, is she, her, I think 1973. Let's take a look and see what's happening with the dogs around her, because she's wanting to go for a swim, which is really excellent, Sinija. Really, really, really good for your body, your nervous system. Really, really good way of having like a source reset, you know, for the body. The ocean, salt water in the ocean. Okay, so just doing some initial clearing for Sinija, some what I call the fast track through the hair. Okay, so let's take a look. So Sunija 1973. Let's see what's happening with the dogs. Yeah, it's hard. They're saying, because of course, the dogs just want to play, you know, but um, the adults also, or the people and the children also need to feel safe. So, but yeah, right away what they're seeing is, yeah, the dogs just want to play, and then the owners are like checked out, or the guardians of the dog are checked out. So the more the wild the dog, the more it actually is a reflection of the people's nervous system. So like if the dog is really wild, the nervous system of the person that's the guardian of the dog is hijacked. So let's see. Sunija says, I love dogs too, but don't like them touching them. Yeah, of course, and we don't want, and we also don't know if we don't know the dog, we don't know. And also if the owner feels dodgy, then we don't, then the dog is going to be unpredictable, right? So there's a lot of unpredictability with dogs, and especially dogs with children. And then some owners, you know, or guardians, they're not in their bodies. So then who is coming into their body, right? Who then is taking the bot over the body? I know it sounds scary because it's like sounds like possession. So woo, you know, but it's a energy frequency. So when you leave your body, there's an energy and frequency that comes into the body, and it is low 3D. So we're seeing that the dogs just want to play, but of course, then Sunita also wants to play. She wants to swim in the water, have some sunshine. So they're saying, um, again, like call on source in the moment, like in the moment that you're feeling like scared or agitated, and kind of like you feel like you're in danger, like something, like the dogs could encroach you or the dogs could come to you. They're like practice, um, like be if you're in your body connected to your higher self, that is presence, the I am presence, and then call in source's golden light as the protection, or imagine like you being in like a diamond, and the diamond is refracting like everything else out from you. And they're saying because frequency always wins. So the most embodied frequency always wins. So they're showing an example. So I was, I think it was like last year, and I was on a crowded bus, and it was like, body to body. It was so crowded. It was like a university bus. So there was like, it was just packed. And no one touched me at all. No one touched me because I just called in Source's golden light. And I was like, I don't want anyone to bump into me. I don't want to bump into anybody else. And it was crowded, and it was actually hard how not to bump into somebody. But anyways, I set that intention because I was like practicing it with energy, practicing calling in source consciousness for protection. And then when I went to get off, I found people went like this, to let me by, like they moved away. And then there was a guy at the door, and he jumped off the bus so that I could get off the bus, and then he jumped back on the bus. It really blew me away. But I was testing to see, how does frequency work and how does it feel? And it was amazing, so now it's like and now it really has reminded me, like everywhere I go, you know I'm driving, I'm calling in source consciousness, connecting to my higher self. It's making me, before I would forget and I would remember like later, but now I'm having a continuous dialogue, connecting to my higher self, connecting to presence, and then calling in source consciousness. And I do imagine myself as like a diamond refracting light. Like I call it the diamond body refracting light. And then you just practice and then just play with it. There's no right or wrong, right? There's no good or bad. It's just practice and it's just remembering. So connecting to the heart, and I always connect to the heart and I connect to the deep I, which is the I am presence. I am that I am. That's connecting to your higher self, which to me immediately connects to source consciousness. Eckhart Tolle calls it the vertical, connecting with the vertical, right? The horizontal is like linear time, and the vertical is source consciousness. And then just surround yourself and then just see, like, set your intention so that your frequency, so you're anchored in your frequency, they're saying. And then practice and then play with it, play with it at the beach, play with it wherever you are, and then see how it goes. But when I was on the bus, I wasn't like, oh, everybody should stay away from me. I called in source consciousness. No, I just called in source consciousness and I got on the bus, right? Because I'm not getting into anybody's business. I'm not I'm not saying nobody should touch me. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just calling in source consciousness, connecting to divine presence in the heart, connecting to the deep I, my higher self, the I am presence. And my intention was to, I didn't want anybody touching me. I didn't want anybody bumping into me, and I wanted spaciousness around me. And I set that intention, and I received spaciousness around me. So they're saying, good question, and play. Yeah, play with it. Some releasing for you, Sanija. They're just releasing from the body. So yeah, and they're pointing to like tourmaline. So if you have tourmaline, that can help kind of really anchor right now. They're saying that can really help. The crystal tourmaline can help kind of as an anchor right now. All right, so just sending some hearts. Okay, so let's close for Sinija and bring in benevolent healing for the highest and greatest good. Only only source aligned guides, only source aligned angels and archangels of only unconditional love and source aligned for Sinija. And we claim this in source's name and seal it in source's name. Good job. Thanks, Sinija. Okay, let's take a look. Sinija said, I did call God source divine presence ahead of me, kind of paving my way. It was a weird day yesterday. Yeah, it might be one of those where where it's like you're calling and connecting constantly, right? Like because you're anchoring presence, because of the decree, you're releasing a lot and you're reclaiming. And then 3D, it's like it's nothing but tests. Like it's nothing, like don't think of it as tests, like I'm gonna fail, but it's like when you claim a frequency like source frequency, well, 3D has like a temper tantrum, I kind of call it. They kind of like have a temper tantrum, but source always wins. Source always wins. Source is always 17 steps ahead. We're always told in 3D, oh, be afraid, and oh, like nobody's there. Source isn't there to help you. There's no help. That's garbage. When we call in help, help comes in. And I always say the help that you call in for source, only source aligned guides, only source aligned angels, only source aligned higher self, even. Yeah. And then we'll have some water. Okay, so let's take a look. Cindy just says she has tourmaline and she says, thank you, Elaine. And she gives hugs, an angel, and a yellow heart. Cute. Thanks, Sinija. And then Sinija says, honestly, it felt like a test. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing, Sinija. Yeah. And that's the thing, because the thing is, they're having a temper tantrum because you're changing your frequency and you're stabilizing your frequency. And if you stabilize in 5D, they have zero access to you. If you, because you go past 4D to 5D, and the interference is coming from 4D, and they don't have any access. And if you're embodied 5D, they have no access. And then you're going to start. And then what's interesting and what has happened for me is then you start making connections about your life and then all time space. So, because all the timelines, all the false timelines are collapsing, and you're basically, your frequency is aligning into that I am presence, into the present moment. And it's like a huge amplification happens in that moment. That's amazing. Cindy just said, I was agitated, but not as I used to be. That's awesome. Exactly. Right? That is the big shift. It's like, yeah, your nervous system got agitated because that's what they affect, the 3D, you can call them archons, or I just call it like, because as soon as we say archons or Draco reptilians, or the dark triad, the psychopath, sociopath, narcissist, we think of them as like powerful because they're like beings, but I just like to call them interference, because then that really, they are not powerful compared to the heart and compared to source. And so I just like calling them interference. Like they're interfering with source, basically. And then our job is just to see it and then to name it and then to release it to source. Yeah, that's good. All right, I'm going to send lots of hearts. So thanks for the feedback too, Sineja. That's really good. Yeah, so with the decree, we're really anchoring in our sovereignty. We're declaring our liberation. Like we're not here to be tossed around and manipulated and used and abused. We're not. Thanks for the hearts. Somebody sent some hearts. I'm going to send them back, but I can never tell who sent them, just that they have appeared. Um, So you can kind of think of it as like a monitoring system of like frequency. So they're seeing, they of 4D are seeing that your frequency is changing, that you're anchoring in 5D consciousness, which is heart-based consciousness. And so they know that you're not accessible. And so then they start doing tests. I had one test where I was walking downtown, and I think I made a video about it, but I didn't really realize, at the time, like what a big test it was. But I was meeting a friend for coffee, and I we were at one table, and then we moved at another table. And then when I went to go, my purse was gone. And I was like, where's my purse? And then she got up right away and she said, well, I'm just going to ask, at the counter if somebody brought, handed in your purse. And I was like, the purse was like on my chair. And I was like, that is so trippy. Like, and then to somebody to actually like, take my purse and then, give it to lost and found behind the counter just seemed bizarre. And there it was. Somebody took it and then put it back to the counter, and then nothing was stolen or taken. And I was like, what happened? So when I asked, what happened, they said it's basically was a timeline shift. And it was like the theft kind of happened in 3D. But then because of our conversation was so anchored in source consciousness, that was basically like, no, you don't. And then they pluck it and then they anchor it into 5D. And I've had things disappear. And actually, somebody just told me that on the weekend where they had something and then it disappeared and then it, reappeared later. And so I'm starting to think that that's frequency, that there's things that are in 3D, but then if they're anchored in 5D, that they're not visible in 3D. And if they're taken in 3D and it's like, no, 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 that's not yours, right? Like my purse, it's like, no, that's not yours. And then it is brought back. I don't know. But somebody on the weekend also was telling me that story out of the blue. So, and you are going, and also too, we do throughout our day are going through different frequencies. We are going, 3D, high 3D, we're asking questions. High 3D is like asking questions, not accepting things at face value, seeing things as they are, not getting like Eckhart, he said, like at the beginning of the retreat, he said, you don't have to watch the news because I'll give you the update if anything has happened. You know, because it triggers people's pain bodies, the news, and he wanted people on the retreat to have a chance to like not be on their phones, not be on social media, not be listening to the news, and to be in presence, right? To be in your own source energy frequency with source, not as source, but with source, being one with source. And then what I really started seeing is in different times in my life that there were different timelines happening. So, whew. So I kind of think 3D's whole job is to keep you in that low 3D frequency, and they kind of have more control, of the material plane. They have control of your body and your, I don't know, your stuff, but then as soon as you're anchoring in 5D, they don't have control of your body and your stuff, basically. I don't know, they're called the controllers. They don't really like being called that. They like being called the architects. Or worse, they like being called God or gods, which is even worse. But that's how they see themselves. So I think they have a parasite. I think they kind of got hit on their head. Maybe they tumbled. I think they got tumbled away from source, and then based on their decisions, they got further and further and further away. And then it's like almost like they're confused because in 4D, they don't have a body, so they don't know what is up or down. They don't know what is source aligned or not source aligned. They're kind of like, I think they're scrambled. But that's why I feel like, with the body and with the decree, we really have a chance to see things as they are and clear things because our body is telling us. Our body is, like I will tell people and they'll be like, but how do I know that it's true? And it's like, well, did you get chills on your body? Like those, the angel bumps where you can't control it, but you get those little bumps all over. That's truth. That's the body registering it's true. And then you test it, don't believe anything until you really believe it. Just because someone says it, just because I say it, doesn't mean it's true. Test it and see it, because that's, really the decree is there for your own sovereignty so that you can test it and see, how do I feel? How does my body feel? And then connecting, and then your higher self right away, only source aligned, right? Only source aligned higher self, because now we just want to be very careful with our words as we're anchoring 5D. And then your higher self will start making the links and the connections. And so as soon as you start, and for me, what happened as soon as I started doing the decree, timelines started collapsing, false timelines started collapsing. And then, essentially the premise is, as a monad, the original spark from source emanates from source and then comes and has an experience in a 3D body, emanating from source, like a heart-based being. And then there's all this falseness in 3D, like this fakeness, this manipulation, control, trauma. It's like one big trauma boat. It's like Noah's Ark is like one trauma boat. It's like a big trauma boat. It's literally trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. That is 3D. And then basically clearing it and then anchoring your frequency in 5D consciousness, which is the heart, staying in your heart no matter what. And that was always what was so hard for me is staying in my heart with injustice. You know, no, they're not allowed to do that. No, it can't be that way. And it's like, well, it is that way. It does exist. You know, the dark triad does exist. And even if I say it a million times, no, it's not allowed. Well, it's here. It's allowed. You know, it's happening, right? So me saying no, you know, I don't want it to exist doesn't clear it from existence. It means I see it, I name it, and then I say, not for me. But I'm not deciding for everybody. I'm only deciding for myself. Like we can only liberate our own heart and our own consciousness. And then as one liberates their heart and their consciousness, then they can affect up to 750,000 other people that are in low 3D, right? So we shift things with our own frequency, but releasing control, you know, because I was like, you know, light workers are very much like, this shouldn't be allowed, and this isn't justice, and this, and it's like, yeah. And then if you stay in that, then you're going to stay low 3D, right? Okay, and then Sunija says, I'm experiencing timeline shifts too. One time my oven clock was 30 minutes behind my cell phone time, and I've never seen that happen before. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's like, and you have to kind of do a double take. So what I've been doing for these funny situations is I've been taking screenshots. So yesterday, something came up, like I did a search and it was like about me. And I was like, what? Where did this come from? So I took a screenshot and then basically was like, whoa. And then I looked again and tried to get back to the same, and it was just on Google. It wasn't even on ChatGPT or other AI. It was on Google. It was a Google search and it was my name. And then I was like, what? So I took a screenshot and then I went back and it was gone. And I typed the same thing again to see if I could find it again, and it was gone. So to me, that is two timelines showing at once. So, but I feel like because that happened, and it was a really interesting piece of information, and because that happened, I feel like I'm getting closer and closer with more timelines collapsing, right? So basically, when we say I'm not of their realm, and this realm has no claim on what I am, like we're basically saying I'm not 3D. Like I am source aligned. Like I'm claiming my sovereignty. I'm claiming I am source aligned. And then all of the false timelines, you know, because Earth is convoluted. Like we're, you know, I feel like it was such a distraction. All of this, like I love the galactics. Like the Pleiadians have only source aligned. The Syrians have only source aligned, the Andromedans only source aligned, you know, like I love them, right? You know, like lately, what has been coming up are the cherubim, and that I'm just learning about the cherubim, which are these like angels with eyes all over, but they're like an eagle and like a, I think an eagle and a bull, and like they have like three animals also with them. They're like high vibration in service to source angels, but you know, they look like, you know, they also have like three animals connected to them. So they're able to me to see, I feel like now that they're appearing, and this is energy work, remember, like we're not in fantasy land, this is energy work. So is that, with the animals, they're able to see both the timelines with the human body, and the energy of the higher dimensional, kind of like the angelic collective. And the collective is one, you know? It's not like I'm a seraphim and I'm better than the cherubim. The cherubim have a style, the seraphim have a style, the archangels have a style, the angels, and there's different orders of angels, they have a different style. Recently I learned from one of my clients that Archangel Gabriel, we kept seeing him, but he was kind of hidden. And that's because he's working with the ley lines on Earth right now. So but I'm very strict about portal jumpers. I'm very strict about calling in only source aligned, only source allowed here, leave now. I'm constantly the boss. I'm not the boss of anybody, but I am the boss of this space, right? So I really claim this space in source's name. So that's a really good example with timeline shifts, Sinija. That's really interesting. And it's seeing like false timelines collapsing. So, and if you get a chance, like screenshot it, because you'll start seeing um uh you'll start seeing the different you'll start seeing like that doesn't just happen once. It happens, many times kind of thing. So, but yeah, my purse, imagine like it got stolen. And I actually had, quite a bit of money in it. Just happened to have money in that in and all my ID and stuff. And it came back to me like untouched. And the person behind the counter is like, "Oh, here's your purse." Like it was nothing. It was so bizarre. But that was the beginning. And I would say that was either in um, I think it was like after August 2024, so probably September 2024 when that happened with my person. Then I was starting to see there was like this kind of like timeline shifts happening, and it's happened more and more. Yeah, good question. Thanks, Sunija. Okay, so let's take a look at the chat again. So Sunija says the three animals might symbolize seraphim connection to the three types of humanoids that those animals represent. Oh, did I miss Helen? Does Helen have a question? Oh yeah. Okay, let's take a look. No, it's okay. Oh, Sunija says, sorry, Helen has a question. Okay, thanks, Sunija. I missed that actually. Let's go back up the chat. I like, oh, there's just a little white butterfly that just flew by the window. Oh, that's cool. A nice little room, a nice little message. Just, yeah, white butterfly. Cute. Nice. Okay, with the seraphim and the cherubim are separate angels. They're a separate type or a separate style. Think of it as style. Like there's source and then there's emanated beams of light from source. But then we have like our own style. So the seraphim have their own style. The seraphim are like, they have eyes like everywhere and multiple wings. And they're like very devoted to source, like their full devotion in source, 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 full devotion, devotion. Um, so they come on Earth in 3D and their devotion gets really used against them. So, um, and then the cherubim are different. I usually like, for me, I wait until they appear in my space, in my field, and then I know that they're coming in for a reason, and then I basically learn about them as, they come into my field. Sinija says butterflies mean, or butterfly means transformation. Oh, cute. Yeah, transformation. Sending some hearts. Okay, so let's go up to Helen's question. So Helen, where are you? Oh, Helen, she, her. Hi, Elaine. Helen, she, her, 1982. I'm having issues with my right eye again. Could you look into it for me? I really appreciate it. Okay, so let's look into that. Okay, so Helen, a deep breath, connecting to heart, to the heart, to source consciousness, just clearing the field. Okay, Helen, 1982. So right eye. Okay, so look into the right eye. Okay, so clearing, clearing, clearing. Fast track as always. Kind of like release everything that is not for Helen's highest and greatest good, just really quickly. Okay, and then oh, what's coming through just quickly is the white butterfly. It was a message of purification. White butterfly, the purification. All right, so there you go, Helen. Your higher self answered the question of the white butterfly. Okay, so they're saying take off my glasses, so see clearly. Okay, all right, let's see. You can see clearing, 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 clearing the eyes, clearing both eyes. Okay, so there's an activation that's happening with Helen's right eye. And they want to tell you that it is called Ohorai. Ohorai. Ohorai is 9D. And your right eye is Ohorai. Ohorai. Ohorai activation. They're just clearing. They're just clearing right now. So what does that mean for Helen? What does that mean for Helen? So Helen's eye is getting activated. The right eye, which is the divine feminine side, is getting activated to 9D, the right eye. So they're saying they're clearing the interference. And they're just saying that that is actually Helen's home base of her seeing. The divine feminine sees from 9D. And they're just clearing the interference. And they said, like they're very enthusiastic. Like this is a very enthusiastic activation. Like they're very happy to that the interference has cleared, like there's been sufficient interference clearing that has cleared and that has activated the 9D Ohorai, Ohorai, 9D, but you're in a 3D body. But the eyeball, the eye, not the eyeball, but the eyesight, they're saying the seeing will be 9D. And they're very enthusiastic. It is only something that can happen once the interference has been removed, like a sufficient amount of the interference. So it will feel kind of like what they're saying is it's kind of feels scratchy or like itchy or like agitated, like scratchy. They're saying it feels scratchy. And almost like there's an imbalance, like because the right eye is 9D Oharai, and then the left eye is not. The left eye is anchoring in a 5D. So they're saying it's okay. It doesn't, not everything has to be equal. So 5D frequency is good enough, on the divine masculine side, but the divine feminine side, the right side of the body, is activating at 9D. So an example of 9D on Earth in a 3D body was Mother Mary, but her spiritual name is Miriam, Mariam. So Mar I am. And she usually comes in, I find, with a scent um like the lily of the valley scent, or like I smelt it the other day and I knew she was here. Like I'll smell lilacs or lily of the valley or lilies. I will smell them and then I know she's around, like a frequency. She's around like a frequency. But she would have, in order to have, in the crucifixion timeline, the Jesus timeline, in order to have a 7D incarnated baby in that density, she would have incarnated at 9D. So she's an example, even though it's been all erased, and she's like this virgin. Like, she was she incarnated in a 3D body at 9D frequency to have a 7D baby, which was named Yeshua, not Jesus. The baby was named Yeshua, Yeshua. And he was renamed way later. They changed his name way later. So they're saying you're in good company. You can call on her, on Miriam. You can say Mother Mary or Miriam, and then only source aligned, right? Because we're being super careful right now. And then you can call on Miriam to help with the activation. It's not that you need help with the activation, it's the stabilization. Because it feels itchy, it feels agitated, it feels like, what's going on, but it's because the interference has been ejected out of the I, out of the divine feminine. And so now your home base is being reinstated. So it's basically how you were born. You were born with a 9D Oharai right eye on the divine feminine, but then with whatever happened, there was interference, got covered up, and then now it's being released, basically, or revealed. That they're saying revealed is a better word. And also they are very enthusiastic. Your team of Only Source Aligned is very enthusiastic. They are very excited about this activation. And so what can help is you can have some lilies in your home or lilacs, and you can also ask Mother Mary, but her name is Miriam, Mar, Mar, and then I am Miriam. So Mar, I am. So the I am presence. And she's a seraphim, Miriam. Yeah, they're like very enthusiastic. And they're saying it could take until kind of like the winter till it fully kind of stabilizes. Um, they're showing me like you're wearing a scarf, so whenever it starts snowing, maybe where you live, like October, maybe October, November. So it will take a little bit, but just call in, Miriam to help, call in your higher self, Only Source Aligned, and then it will yeah, they're saying I could say an example like that same activation would happen to me in February. And so I once a sufficient amount of interference left, what I saw was like this little spider get ejected out of my right eye. It was like interference. But then what happened was the right eye activated to 9D Oharai. So it's like a frequency. But I had to have a sufficient amount of interference be removed before the activation happened. But now my eye feels totally fine. So it's been a few months. So February, March, April, May, June. Yeah, 4 months. Yeah, so we're June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, there's 4 months. Yeah, there you go. October. Okay, understood. Received. Okay. Let me just check the chat if Helen has any more questions. Um, um, so Helen says she felt a vibration. Okay. And then Helen says, yes, okay. And then so beautiful. Uh, what's and then Helen says, thank you. Okay, so let's close for Helen. Helen says, wow. Okay, so let's close for Helen. So yeah, see, as one activates, we all activate, right? It's like 90 activations. Okay, so let's close, but they're very enthusiastic. So just know that your team is very enthusiastic. So just always call on only source aligned. So we call in source's golden light. So for benevolent healing for Helen, and also that that all of this kind of like it's not an upgrade because it is your natural state, but it's like removing the interference. So they're like, it's basically a reinstating your natural uh, incarnation of your source alignment. That's how they want to word it. But they're very enthusiastic. They see you wearing like a scarf. So I'm seeing you wear a scarf. So I'd say like, maybe where you live, like it starts snowing in like October, November. So, but it will, now that we've, looked into it, it should also, now that you understand that it's, something very positive that it, they're like, unwind, 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 unwind. Like it will help it ease it, like ease it. If it does really agitate you, sometimes you can put like a warm cloth just with water like on your eye. You could do that. And but it's like energy. So, but it helps you kind of like feel calm, like a warm towel can maybe make you feel calm, and then the integration can happen with more ease and grace. But overall, like they're very enthusiastic. So Helen says, thank you so much. So we're closing for Helen. So Helen is closed, and we're sealing Helen's question in source's name, and then only source aligned higher selves and guides of only source aligned. Even the seraphim only source aligned, because there are some that have, fallen. It's not funny, but some of them, like they get confused, and they're have to find their way back, just like all of us. Okay, thanks, Helen. So lots of love, sending some hearts. Okay, and then I'm gonna do, it's 12:22. I'll do one more question and then I'll close up. Melissa K 3810. Okay, I would like to know about my eyes. Can you please take a look? Yeah, Melissa, can you tell me your year of birth? Um, and then your preferred pronouns, she, he, they. I can look into it without the year, but it makes it more crystal clear. It's like there's lots of antennas, and as soon as I have a year, it narrows down the focus. Okay, so let's take a look. Melissa says 1968. Okay, so Melissa 1968 she. Okay, thanks, Melissa. Okay. So Melissa 1968, she wants to look into her eyes. Okay. I would like to know about my eyes. Okay, she wants to know about her eyes. Okay, so something's going on with Melissa's eyes. So we've closed for Helen because I just said Helen's name, so I just want to make sure we've closed for Helen. And sealing Helen's session in source's name or her question in source's name. So sealed in source's name. Okay, so now Melissa 1968. And we want to look into Melissa's eyes, and she's a she. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so the first thing they want to say is you're so tired. Like I just felt like this collapse of like so tired. So why is Melissa so tired? So just doing some quick clearing for Melissa's energy field. Yeah. Yeah, what they're saying is kind of like what your energy's like is that it's moving like very slowly. So it's like, if you looked at the wind and the leaves on the tree, they're saying they're blowing kind of like very slowly. So want to see what's happening with your energy. Yeah. Yeah, so they're just moving, kind of getting your energy moving just very slowly, like very gently, like very, yeah, they don't want to shock your system, but they're just moving your energy like very gently. Kind of like our energy's like a spiral. And they're saying that Melissa's energy is kind of like this, like it's not spiraling. I mean, this is energy work. So it's like, it's not that Melissa's still, it's that this is just her energy. Yeah, eye strain, they're saying computer. And then basically there's like a depletion, like a collapse, that happens. It's like so much screen time. It's like a collapse that happens. And then your energy is kind of like collapsed. And so then it's not moving. It's like it's not moving. So yeah, so just naming it now, there's more now right away that I could see the leaves on the trees moving a bit more. So it's like just even naming it has created a shift. So sometimes it's kind of like they're saying, like, you can, if you're on the screens, there's got to be like a way of like closing out the screen. So you're on screens and then you take a break and then you're like, I close the screens and then I'm back and then I close the screens. So they're kind of showing that it's like the screens are there and then close the screens and then the screens are there and then close the screen. So then do um do some, like, it's got to be intentional, like I close this screen, because what happens is, like, say you're on the screen, but then you're away from the screen, but it's almost like the screen kind of comes with you, like, so that it's nothing's closed. It's like the TV being on all the time, or the computer being on all the time, or the phone, being on all the time. There's no break. And they're just saying for your frequency, for your vibration, it's like you're overwhelmed, overdone, overdone is the word that they're saying. And so energetically, intentionally saying, this screen is closed. They're showing, like, okay, say you're scrolling before bed and then you turn it off, but actually say this screen is closed. Because what happens is like you may stop watching, but it's still open. Like it's like a portal. It's like, I don't know if that word's weird for you, but it's like leaving a portal open. So it's like, like with the computer, you don't have to have the internet on at night. So you can turn the internet off at night and then turn it back on in the morning. So they're basically saying everything's on all the time. So it would be the equivalent of having the radio on all the time, the TV on all the time, the computer on all the time. It's like basically your system's kind of like collapsed because there's so much like noise, basically. Like there's so much input, there's constant input into your field. And so then your body is kind of overwhelmed with all the input and can't kind of catch up. Like can't catch a break is what they're saying. Can't catch a break. So they're just clearing now just to see. And then just clearing. And you can see sometimes, with my hair, it's like almost like a knot, like it's hard to actually release it. And that sometimes it's like flick, 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 and then sometimes it's like a knot. So they're saying it's kind of like that. It's like that's what happens, like a knot, like a stagnancy, like an energy knot. And then we're not ever really told that these are like, internet portals. Sounds very sci-fi, but it's like they're portals, they're energy portals, and we're not told to like close them out, close out tabs, turn off the internet at night because you're not using it, you're sleeping. You can actually like turn off the button. Um, you can still have your alarm if you use your phone for an alarm, but you can put it on airplane mode, which turns off the internet. So they're saying like your frequency is very refined. And so it is getting constantly bombarded. It's not like negative, like you're sensitive, it's refined, like which means you have a refined frequency. So it's like a hummingbird is refined. A hummingbird has a refined frequency. Like a hummingbird will only appear if the frequency is a good, loving frequency and the flower is sweet and good flower, like a flower, for food. So the hummingbirds really follow frequency. And so they're saying you're kind of like a hummingbird, like you're have that kind of a frequency of like a hummingbird. And hummingbirds are very choosy because they won't go into just any frequency. Like they won't appear, they won't come in front of like a really angry person. They'll come in front of like, if you have like a good kind of loving frequency. Because hummingbirds hate harshness. They hate loud noises, they hate harshness, they're very refined. They have a very refined frequency. So um think of yourself as a hummingbird, they're saying. Think of that you have that level of refinement. And then yeah, yeah, just think of yourself kind of that level of refinement. And like that hummingbirds are very choosy with the frequency that they're around. Why? That's why they're so rare. They appear so rare. Like I think I've only had a hummingbird appear at my window once. So, and I was like amazed. So it's a very refined frequency. And they're saying like you can energetically say, this is closed now. Like, and then just even throughout the day, like they're saying even like at the beginning, every 5 minutes, like, okay, this frequency is closed now, and then either look away or look out the window or look at a plant or a flower, look at a flower and then just, or some fruit, and then just focus on the fruit, focus on the flower. And then, but close that frequency and then focus on the consciousness of like a flower or fruit or a tree or a plant, and then go back to the screen. So basically like they're like intentionally, the flower, the plant, the fruit, the aliveness of it is kind of like helping your frequency, like how a hummingbird goes to a flower, kind of like that. You can just have one single flower on with you all the time, like on your desk or, you know, by the TV, by the monitor, just have a flower. By the modem. They're like, just to bring in that consciousness, the source consciousness. And then it's not like they're saying it's not just the eyes, it's the whole body, it's the whole field. The whole field is like shaken up, because the frequencies off of the constant interference of the technology. So, but they're saying, yeah, like you're like a hummingbird. So think of that, think of like, would you put a hummingbird in that environment? And then if a hummingbird was in that environment, what would a hummingbird need? So, and they love flowers, so even if you have like one flower, they're saying just even one flower that you love, in front of you, and then that will really kind of feed you that energy, that source consciousness. Okay, so before we close for Melissa, let's look at the chat and see what Melissa has to say. So Melissa says, oh, Sunija says for Melissa, time for a new career. Yeah, we don't know what Melissa's career is or how she spends her time. We don't know yet. Melissa says, boy, do I need one. Oh, so she's saying, Sunija said, Melissa, time for a new career. And then Melissa answered, boy, do I need one. And then Melissa says, wow, I love this. And then Melissa says, that makes sense to me. Okay, that's beautiful. Yeah. And Melissa says she has orchids. Wow. Yeah, beautiful. And orchids are like kind of snobby. I kind of find they will either thrive or they won't thrive based on your frequency and vibration. So that makes sense that you would have orchids. Like they're very refined. It's a very refined frequency. Okay, so then that should help. So sometimes it's like it's the eyes, but then really it's the whole body, and then really it's the energy field and it's the frequency, and then also kind of finding out your style, like finding out your resonance. So, okay, so let's close for Melissa. So we asked for golden light from source to seal the space, to seal the information for Melissa, and then seal it in source's name. And we're asking right to the root cause, to the very first incarnation. So a full healing and sealing it in source's name. And golden light. Very good. They're saying very good, very good, very good. Yeah, just be one with the hummingbirds. Thanks, Melissa. All right, sending you lots of love. And Melissa says, thank you so much. And a smiley face. Beautiful. All right. Well, I think right now, I think we've been going for like 84 minutes, it says. So I think let's close now. I think there was a few more things in the chat, but let's grab those, or we can kind of, actually, I don't know what to do. But I feel like we need to end. let's, yeah, I think it's nice to end with the healing and the clearing because it sets a nice frequency for everybody as well, as we're all in the one space of that 5D consciousness that we're anchoring. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. As always, uh, use your own discernment and remember any information that you receive, your body will respond, and then you'll know if it resonates for you. Okay. Yeah. So we got some hearts. So sending some hearts back. And then, okay, so let's end here and I'll see you in the next one. We're live again on Thursday at 7:30 Pacific. So a bit earlier. It's a quieter time. It feels like a different frequency than this 11:11 time. So we'll see you then, and thanks for joining. Thanks for asking questions. And yeah, always use your discernment. And we're not here to learn things. We're here to remember and then clear out what is not ours, right? Clear out the interference. All right, good job. All right, take care, everybody.